A few months ago, my 3-year-old daughter had the flu. After she was feeling a little better, my wife took her outside into our backyard to play. My wife was sitting on the back step and our daughter came up and asked if she could play with the little girl on the slide. My wife said, "I don't see a little girl, honey." And my daughter said,
"She's on the slide and she's blue. Can I play with her?"
My wife said, "I don't see anyone." And then my daughter insisted,
"She's right over there on the slide, Mum. Can't I play with her?"
My wife was now freaked out and said, "Let's go inside and make a snack, honey." So they did. For the rest of the day, my daughter kept going and looking out the back door and kept telling my wife that the little blue girl was lonely. I was tucking in my 3-year-old son to bed the other day. We say the typical slews of "I love you," and then he just stops talking. Extremely atypical. He has maybe shut up one time since his larvae stage. So he puts his head down on the pillow, kind of pointing his face down, and rolls his eyes up to look at me. His arm was down by his side, and he just points one finger towards the rocking chair in the room. Without moving his arm, he says,
"Mummy, before you leave, can you take the rocking chair out of my room so the man will leave me alone?"
I'm pretty sure all the colour drained from my face. He then proceeds to tell me that the man's name is Johnny, and that he's a bad man, and very mean. Johnny doesn't say anything though, because he doesn't have a mouth. He just sits there and stares at my son. While changing my daughter in front of the open closet door, she kept looking around me and laughing. I asked her what was so funny, and she said,
"The man."
To which I replied, "What man?" She then pointed at the closet door and said,
"The man with the snake neck."
I turned around and nothing was there. I'm afraid to look into the history of my house to see if anyone had hung themselves there. At least she wasn't scared. I have a younger brother who had an imaginary friend when he was younger. He was also an avid sleepwalker. When he was around the age of 3 or 4, he started talking to someone he used to call Friar. He described Friar as a dark-skinned man with little clothes who loved to hunt in the wilderness. Then, one day, he told me that Friar used to live nearby the houses a long time ago, and then some white people came and burnt him alive and killed his village. Not exactly something you'd expect to hear from a 4-year-old. I remember I would be in my room hearing him talk like he was having a conversation, and when I would try and check up on him, he would immediately become silent and turn his head as soon as I peeked around the corner. Very unsettling. Well, my other brother, the middle child, was visiting his dad for the summer, but the day he got back, my youngest brother told my mother that Friar doesn't like it when my brother's mean to me, so he's going to scare him. The night he got home, my mum and I were downstairs and heard a scream that I can still hear to this day. We ran upstairs and found the middle brother swearing that someone was shaking his bed violently. It was a bunk bed, and my youngest brother was sound asleep. A month later, my youngest brother took a bad fall and cracked his skull. He was fine, but he never talked to Friar again after that. He would sleepwalk constantly and showed up right next to my bed and stare at me until I woke up and promptly shat myself. One night, I heard my front door open and close. Since it was 4 AM, I went to check it out. I opened the door and found my brother at the far end of the yard, in the snow, only in his underwear, staring right at me. He then waved very slowly. Those shivers were not from the cold. I was tucking in my 2-year-old into bed, and he says,
Goodbye, Dad.
I say, no, we say goodnight. And he goes,
I know, but this time it's goodbye.
had to check on him a few times that night to make sure he was still there. My mum told me this story the other day and it freaked me out. When my oldest sister was like 3, she asked my then pregnant aunt to pick her up and hold her. My mum said, oh, she can't pick you up, honey, she has a baby in her tummy. And then my little sister was like,
That baby is dead.
my mum freaked out, but my aunt and grandma were fine with it, telling my mum it was all good and that she was just a toddler and didn't know what she was on about. Well, lo and behold, my aunt goes to the doctor the next day for a routine pregnancy checkup and the baby was dead. Gives me the willies just thinking about it. My son was cuddling his grandmother and being very sweet with her. He was only about 3 at the time. He takes her face into his hands and brings his face closer to hers, and then tells her that she's very old and will die soon. Then he makes a point of looking at the clock. We were driving along a road one day, and my first son at 3 years old was falling asleep in the car, when he just blurted out,
Last time, I died in a fire.
I almost drove off the road. So, I'm standing outside talking to my neighbour's 3-year-old, whilst Dad talks to him. Mum comes up the driveway, whilst we're discussing her new Frozen bike, and she asks,
Who is it?
I say that's my mummy, and then she asks,
Oh, so do you have 2 mummies?
and I'm like, no, why do you ask? And she goes,
Oh, then who was that other lady that was standing there a minute ago?
just pointing behind where Dad's standing. There was absolutely no one there. My father tells me this story of my childhood every once in a while. When I was around 6 years old, my dad's best friend committed suicide. We'll call him Joe for the sake of the story. Obviously, it was a very rough and emotional time for my dad. Joe was my dad's best man at his wedding, and the one guy who would always be there for him. After my dad got married, he and my mother left Joe and the town that they were in to start a life outside of the town they grew up. After years of moving around California, my family eventually moved to Utah, where my father worked for a successful internet firm. Joe stayed behind in Washington because my family was so far away from their old life with Joe. There wasn't a lot of foresight/warning of what Joe intended to do on ending his own life. Joe's sister apparently had been blaming Joe's wife for his brother's suicide. Joe and his wife drank a lot of booze, and probably as a result fought a lot. My father always said they were a passionate couple. Yes, they would fight often, but he hardly knew 2 other individuals that were so completely in love. For this reason, he did not believe it. A few days after Joe committed suicide, his widow called up my father sobbing about how she thought it was all her fault. After about an hour of trying to console her, he told her, if there were any way for me to talk to Joe right now, I guarantee you that he would tell me that he loved you and that it wasn't your fault that he ended his life. Crying, she still didn't believe him, but thanked him for the kind words and let my father go. My dad was obviously distraught after that long, hysteric conversation. He had been down in his office for a while and he decided to come up and check on the kids after making a pot of coffee to take his mind off things. We were all supposed to be napping, but he thought he'd peek his heads into our rooms to make sure we were safe and maybe to try to have a little smile to brighten his day. Sure enough, when my dad got to my room, I was fast asleep on my bed. He went to my brother's room, and he was also sleeping. Finally, he checks on my sister, who is sleeping as smugly as an angel. He decides to go back towards my room and into the kitchen to make some coffee. As he walks by my room, he notices a whimper. He turns around and enters my room, where he finds me weeping. I was 5 years old, so the way I was crying seemed odd to him. Normally, a 5-year-old would cry drastically and over-dramatically, and I wasn't. I was just sitting on the side of my bed, weeping. My dad enters my room and says, "Matty, what's up? Why are you crying?" It's then that I stop crying for a moment, look up at him with teary eyes and say,
Rick, it's not her fault. I love her. It's not her fault.
With that, I stopped crying, rolled over back onto my bed, and fell swiftly back to sleep. Needless to say, my dad shat his pants. My co-worker's 4-year-old daughter always thought that the rattling of the water pipes in the kitchen cupboards were white wolves, and the sound always scared her. One day she was sitting at the kitchen table and said,
Mum, the white wolves aren't bad. They're our friends.
Her mum encouraged the idea by saying, "Yes, the white wolves are protecting us. They're our friends." Then her daughter added in,
They are our friends, but not the man who crawls on the floor and stands by my bed.
My ex-boyfriend's niece was an only child as far as she was concerned. When she was about 5 years old, she came up to us and asked why Jesus took her sister to heaven. The girl was one of a set of twins. The smaller one died during childbirth, and this event turned about 5 people in the immediate family towards religion. The dead baby was purposefully and dutifully omitted from all thought and speech immediately following the birth. How the surviving twin had any clue freaked out a whole group of atheists. I told my son it was time to go to sleep.
But the ghost isn't here yet.
Is there usually a ghost you go to sleep with?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll just sit here and wait. After 30 seconds of watching TV, he looks at the door like he hears something, turns back to me, grins, hops off my lap and walks to his bed. He's 3. My cousin had a child about 8 years ago. My great-grandmother, a very beloved woman and all-around great person, Grandma Lucy, passed away whilst his wife was pregnant, and only about 2 weeks before she was due. This was a big deal for a few reasons. My cousin would have been the first generation in my mother's side of the family to have a child. Therefore, it would have been my Grandma Lucy's first great-great-grandchild. 5 generations alive at the same time. It would have been pretty cool. But she passed away from a stroke and it was very tragic. Fast forward a couple of years. My cousin and his wife are showing their daughter family pictures. She's about 3 or 4 at the time. And she's asking,
Who is it?
and seeing if she remembers the names of aunts, uncles, grandmas and grandpas, etc. They sort of skip over the picture of Grandma Lucy, and she puts her hand on the picture and says,
That's Grandma Lucy.
My cousin said he was a bit uncomfortable, but asked, "Do you remember hearing us talk about her?" And according to him, his daughter looked him right in the eyes and said,
No, but she visits me and talks to me all the time.
He said he didn't sleep right for a few weeks. Good thing we're all sure that if she is a ghost, she's probably the most kind, gentle ghost there is. But still, creeped me out. When one of my sons was about 4, we had a National Geographic book with a photo of one of the Mayan pyramids on it. One day he was looking through the book and came across a photo of a pyramid. He said
That's a bad place, Mummy. Bad men in masks do things. Bad things in there.
How did he know what went on there? He couldn't read, he was 4. I remembered it many years later when I saw the movie Apocalypto, which had the graphical portrayal of what went on those pyramids. It seems men in masks did do bad things on those pyramids, and his description all those years ago was dead on. So this one dates back about the mid-1990s, when my partner lived in a 120-year-old farmhouse in a small country town in the Midwest. He said he always felt like he was being watched and didn't like sleeping in there. He'd often join his siblings in bed in the other room. Eventually this feeling was manifested into a full-blown figure of a little boy who came out the back of his closet one day and told him that he wanted to be his friend and play. My partner, we'll call him Jake, wasn't scared when he first met his new playmate and was apparently actually pretty excited to have a friend. The ghost kid appeared to be younger than Jake, which he liked because Jake was the baby of the family, so playing with someone younger than him made him feel older. Anyway, his parents couldn't see the ghost kid, so they thought it was an imaginary friend and didn't worry. So months went by and playing together was routine. At night the ghost kid would say goodnight and disappear into the closet. But over time, things around the house started to get bad. Jake's mum found a pentagram under the floorboards in the basement whilst remodelling, along with spells written behind the wallpaper and a slimy growth that was described to me looking like lasagna would periodically grow from the bottom of the basement staircase, and even when it was removed, it would appear again and was slightly mysterious. Things with the ghost kid started to get bad too. He was less nice and more bossy and pushy, physically at times. One day he told Jake that he had died when he was 6 because he fell out the big window, the same window that was in Jake's room. The kid said that he wasn't sad though, and that Jake needed to jump out the window soon so they could always play. My partner had always been self-confident and level-headed, and apparently even so at a young age, because he immediately told the kid that he would never do that and he didn't want to play with him ever again, and to go back into the closet. The ghost kid was sad, but he listened to Jake and never came back out to play. Jake said it was mildly depressing not having him around anymore, but he knew it was for the better. Things in that house kept on happening though, because that place was definitely haunted with an intense past. Hey guys, it's Mort here and thank you so much for listening. Today was something a little different, as I had many great stories and it seemed only fitting to put them into a longer video. As it's something new to me, it would be great if you could let me know what you thought by leaving something in the comments section. Are longer videos something you guys are interested in? And before you click elsewhere, please remember to spam that like button and subscribe to this channel to join the coven, because you won't want to miss the next one. Also, if you have an experience you want to share, be sure to send it to my email, which can be found in the description below. And whilst you're still here, why not check out some of my other content by clicking the links on screen now. Finally, thanks to everyone watching this, your support really means the world to me, and something as arbitrary as a like or a comment really makes a difference to me, so thank you so much, everyone. You're all awesome and I hope you have a great night wherever you are. But until then guys, I'll catch you in the next one.